Okay, part 2. Here we go. Rust Armorer interview by 2 incompetent diversity is our strength hires.
When you got the dummy rounds and the blanks this morning, what were you guys doing before lunch? Was that just...
We were just...
So she starts off very complex, confusing question. She doesn't know what she wants to ask. So when you got the dummy rounds this morning, what were y'all doing before? What? Or do you want to know about the dummy rounds, or you want to know what they were doing at lunch? Very, very confusing, and it's unclear, and it doesn't sound good, and it gives the defense attorney later to attack these 2 idiots on you were trying to confuse my client, weren't you? You didn't want to ask clear questions because you didn't really want the answers. You were trying to trick her, just like you tricked her to say she would talk without a lawyer, even though she asked for a lawyer. Isn't that true, officer female quota hire?
the dummies only, just...
Yeah, just the dummies. We were just about to get into the blank stuff, and you know, like part of my job is checking the barrel to make sure nothing's in it, because that's how Brandon Lee died. You know.
Yes, yeah.
Actually, checking the barrel because there is something I don't think is how Brandon Lee died, but maybe it is. But since she used that reference, explain to me what you mean by when Brandon Lee died. I want to know what she's thinking. I know, I've read, I've seen a live round got put in with, there was a different box of ammo, and they put a live round next to the blank rounds, and it was in a pawn shop or something. They didn't switch it out, didn't secure it, and somebody loaded a live round. That's how I believe, or I remember. But I want to know what she believes happened and how that changes the way that she does her job. Because she's saying the reason I checked the barrel is because of Brandon Lee. Really? Did you get that in formal training? Did they teach you that? They haven't even gone into what training she has to be this position. You are the armorer to keep everyone safe and in charge of all things. What type of formal and informal training do you have? How much on-the-job training? She's going to say, my dad taught me, this guy taught me. What? But they didn't go over any of that. Horrible interview.
So, like, that's what I checked for. I definitely checked this morning, and I was planning on checking again right after lunch.
I was planning on checking after lunch. This girl doesn't, I mean, she's not, you know, you ask me when I do things at the range, this happened because I do it every time that way. Before I leave, I check all the locks to make sure the ammo and everything's secure. I check the range to make sure nobody left a gun or there's no magazines. I make sure, you know, when you do things every day, you have a routine. This girl just kind of sounds like, yeah, you know, I kind of went to lunch. Yeah, well, we left them out and sometimes, and it's either me or Sarah. And yeah, I think I handed it to Dave, the director, and I think he handed it. I mean, it is just a complete lackadaisical recipe for somebody getting killed and somebody died.
Before we got into all the shits, and I already started checking the other 2 guns to check in the thing for them, and none of them had any barrel obstructions. So, yeah.
So you check the gun, but do you check the blanks and the dummies as well?
I do check the dummies. I shook all of them. And
so I do check the dummies. I shook all of them.
And they all showed that they were not hot.
So this girl's hand goes to her hair a lot, and I haven't watched this enough. If I was like evaluating this and think she was lying, I would watch it several times, and I'd watch if her hand goes to her hair every time she freaking lies, because her hand goes to her hair a lot, and she has zero credibility because of the way she's answering questions. She doesn't have a good routine standard. She's not confident. She doesn't explain well. She doesn't know procedure. She says later they yelled at me, so I left. I mean, this is just a weak, simple quota hire that, like, look, we need somebody to say that we have somebody assigned to safety. So we'll throw this job at you because we like your dad, and you'll make money at it. Okay? Just don't get anybody shot. That was probably her freaking interview.
I guess you could say.
How can you tell the difference on the ammo, on the dummy rounds, or the blanks? How can you tell the difference from the blanks and live, real ammunition?
A little ring. Like there's a little ring in there. It just rings. It rattles. It's like a little rattle.
So she says ring, and I don't know. I have seen some bullets that you turn and it goes zzz, zzz. It's got a BB that goes up and down and makes a little noise. But then she says it rattles. So I don't know if somebody's handling a gun, if they want a bullet ringing in a scene. But again, I still don't even know, really, how they do it. I kind of got the gist. It looks like there's holes drilled in the side of the dummy, so you can tell there's a hole, so you know there's no powder in it. And on the blanks, there isn't holes drilled. But this interview is so convoluted. I don't even, like I said, I got more questions after the damn interview of these two incompetents than before.
Yeah, and then also there's ones that I have with holes in the side to show that there's nothing in them.
Okay. So what are these ones? Are the rings?
Yeah, these ones were the rings. There was one, I think, with a hole.
So it sounds like there's two different types of dummies. One rings and one has a holes. Why? Why is there two different types? Do you use one for certain scenes and one for others? Why would there be two types? And why are they mixed and are they kept separate? And is there any type of policy that says you'll only use one type or you can mix them? I mean, they don't ask any of that.
Yeah.
And you put the gun before going to lunch back in the safe.
Yeah.
But the blanks and dummies were left on the cart.
Yeah.
Correct? Did you, when you got back, did they look moved or tampered with or touched when you got back from lunch?
They did not. No, nothing.
See, she gave her the answer she was looking for. Instead of saying, you left them on the cart, when was the next time you saw them? When you got back from lunch, what did you see? Was the cart in the same spot? It was or it was not? Who moved it? Where was the cart when you left it? Did you leave it in a specific spot or did you leave it by the last scene? Is it outside or inside? I mean, none of these questions are asked. I'm watching this interview going, Jesus Christ, you girls suck.
It seemed out of the ordinary.
Of course nothing seemed out of the ordinary. If she says, yeah, came back, it looked really bad and everything, and I didn't want to say anything. Of course she's going to say, no, nothing, everything's fine. I checked, there was no barrels. I checked the blanks. There's no way. Look, somebody's lying. There is a live round that killed somebody, and she's saying, I checked all the rounds and they weren't live. Those two things cannot be true. The only way those two things can be true is if somebody opened a gun and changed a round after she gave it to him. And she said that didn't happen. But she left the room, so she doesn't even know. It's just a mess.
Was the gun still in the safe after lunch?
Yeah.
Let me tell you something. If I got killed, please don't let these two idiots interview somebody that's a suspect on me, because they'll never catch the guy.
Who pulled it out?
Sarah pulled it out and she handed it to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then you watched her?
Yeah.
Mine, where I'm trying to get with is because you can handle the gun, you obviously are going to be loading the gun, so that's why I'm concerned about the dummy and the blanks, because those were left out. And is there some way that somebody can alter them to make them still look like your dummy rounds?
Well, so that's the thing is that, like, bullets, like real bullets, pretty much look the same as dummies. The only difference is the rattle. And so, yeah.
So the armor, the expert, says the dummies have holes in the side and it's different bullets. That's not true. The dummies have the exact same bullet as a regular bullet does. It's supposed to look like a real bullet in a gun. It's going to look like a real bullet. But that's not what she just said. But these two idiots don't even know that, so they don't know what to ask. You put two people that don't even understand guns questioning an expert that doesn't understand guns, and you wonder why when the interview's over, I got more damn questions.
That's a choice, but also, I don't know, I'm kind of wondering, because I heard back in the day, dummies used to have, like, a primer cap. So I'm wondering if maybe it was one of those older ones or something like that.
So, first of all, they should have asked, are you saying that the dummy rounds now do not have a primer? There's a hole. There's not only holes on the side, but there's holes on the back. I mean, they should have took pictures at the scene of the gun and the cart, and they ought to have looked at it and reviewed it and been able to circle or blow up one and go, can you point out which one's dummy and which one's, and how do you know? I mean, they don't do any, they got no pictures, no nothing. These guys they don't have a diagram. They don't have a picture of the crime. They asked her to explain where the door was at. And I was just like, Jesus Christ. You guys couldn't fucking pour piss out of a boot with the instructions on the hill. And you're interviewing somebody that's died or that could be involved or culpable for a death.
Did you load them after lunch?
They were already loaded from before lunch.
Okay.
And so that's the thing is, like, you know, we had that gun the whole time before that, and it was, nothing happened, and I wasn't in there, and they weren't supposed to be even pulling the hammer back.
So
That's a key point. She slid that in, neither one of them catch it. What do you mean they weren't supposed to pull the hammer back? She's going to say the scene did not call for the gun to be fired. What if the scene did call for it to be fired? What would have changed? Well, then I would have had to be there. We don't know that, though. I don't know what the hell her job is because these two idiots don't know how to ask questions.
okay, all right. Let me just clarify a little bit. So prior to lunch, the guns, you had them out,
Yeah.
and where?
This girl is very distracting. She's insecure, so she's throwing her hair around, and her foot's always wiggling and wagging, which is distracting to this person. It makes them nervous. You don't want to be wiggling around and jumping. Her one foot's popping up and down like she's playing a freaking bass drum, and this one's wiggling around like she's working a vibrator. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Keep your damn leg still, woman. You're trying to interview her. You want her looking at you so you can tell if she's lying. You want her staring at you, see if she's breaking contact. You can't do that if you're wiggling your damn foot and she's looking down at your foot.
Where were they when they were out?
They were inside with all the camera crew and everything. It's, COVID, everything happening right now. They don't really like a lot of people in there.
Okay.
And so usually I'm like hardly allowed in there unless there's actual firing happening.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were you inside this morning?
I walked in there and I handed the gun to Alex a couple of times, and Alex took it, and everyone was there with him.
Alec?
Alec
Okay.
Baldwin, yeah.
Baldwin? Okay, so you handed him the gun this morning. Does
Well, wait a minute. You handled a gun to Alex multiple times? When was the first time? And why did you hand it to him? And did he hand it back to you or to someone else? And how long did he have it? When was the second time? Did he hand it back to you or someone else? If he handed it back to you, what did you do with it? Did you hold it? Did you put it back on the cart? Was this before lunch or after lunch? We don't know, because I got two idiots doing an interview.
he pass it off to anybody, or were you able to see that?
At one point, Dave had it, the assistant director, but he was just sitting in with it, and then I saw him, and I was like, okay, this is fine. He's just sitting in, and then I walked out, and yeah.
And how do you know that Dave had it?
I handed it off to Dave while he was sitting in for the shot.
Okay.
So she said at one point he handed it to Dave. Now she just said I handed it to Dave. They didn't clarify or catch that.
All right, so you guys were the only three handlers prior to lunch?
Withdrawing.
Alec, Dave, me. Dave was after lunch.
Okay.
Dave was after lunch.
See, they're letting her kind of fill in the blanks. They're not asking questions to fill in the blanks. They're just getting lucky that she's filling in.
Yeah, that should have been the only ones. Maybe Sarah possibly, but yeah.
Maybe Sarah. How do you know? How does anyone know? How do we backtrack and say who handled this gun? When we print this gun, whose prints are going to be on it? Yours, Sarah, Alex, who else? Dave, who else? The security guard looked at it. I think one guy took it to the restroom and he handed it off to the maid. I mean, we don't even freaking know. They're not asking anything.
Because that's the thing, they chill on our little table, and we're pretty much there all the time.
Okay.
Pretty much there all the time. Does that mean everybody has access to that table? And there's a lot of times where you don't see the table and nobody knows what's going on at the table. Is that fair to say? Somehow a live freaking round got there and we're trying to figure out how and when. The entire camera crew quit the night before. And now we have a round there. Was the card out there when they quit? Was the card out there before? Were the bullets secured the car before the camera crew quit? Where were the bullets before the camera crew quit? Now, we don't know any of that.
And then, so prior to lunch, did they do any scenes or anything of the sort where they were firing the weapon?
No.
Okay.
Nothing
Just
before lunch.
handling.
Yeah, we were just supposed to get into it right after that. Like, literally, that was the last shot before we actually got into blanks.
Okay.
And those blanks were already loaded in before lunch.
No, the blanks are different than dummies. So, yeah, blanks, totally different. They actually have...
Once again, the cop misstates what she said and she has to re-explain it because really nobody has made it clear yet on anything. We haven't established a clear communication so I can use the same words that she uses and they'll have the same meaning. We're just three girls sitting around talking and shit.
Have, like, ignition and powder and everything. dummies, no powder, just for looks.
Just for looks, right?
Yeah.
So so I think everything was after lunch then. So after lunch, you get back, and that's when you loaded a dummy round. I mean, the blanks.
No.
She said they stayed loaded after lunch. They're not listening. They're...
No, no blanks were loaded.
No, like
All
no
I
dummy
had-
today.
Yeah, no blanks were loaded today. I was like getting ready for it. I had my fanny packs like full of like blanks and everything. But
Okay. So when was the last time you loaded it?
I loaded it with the. So I loaded it with 5 of the dummy rounds before lunch, and there was one that wouldn't go in. And so when we got back from lunch, I took the like little cleaner guy, I cleaned it out really quick, and I put another dummy in there.
Okay. So there were 5 total in the gun.
Yeah.
Can you describe?
She said she added another one. There should have been 6.
There was 6. 5, yeah.
Jesus Christ. And nobody asked, what do you mean a round didn't fit? Why didn't it fit? Did you check that round? Did you put that round to the side because it didn't fit? Did you mark that round so nobody else would load it? Maybe that was a live round. What happened to the round that didn't fit? We don't need to know that, Rick. We just got to get rid of this interview. We go finish our freaking donuts.
When the incident occurred, yeah, there were 6.
Okay. Can you describe the gun?
It's a Colt. It's a long barrel Colt.
It's a revolver, but anyway.
Long barrel?
Mm-hmm.
And 6 rounds fit in it?
Yeah.
6 rounds fit in it. Nobody says, is it a revolver or a semi-automatic? By revolver, you mean it has a cylinder? Is it 5 rounds or 6 rounds? No, nobody gets a good description.
What color?
A bronze?
Is it bronze?
Yeah, they're brass. Yeah, kind of bronze, brassy.
Brown, glossy. She's describing the brass, the older brass type copper looking guns.
What caliber?
45.
Okay. And that was the only one that was used today?
No, the other 2 were used too.
Okay. What
Yeah.
do those look like?
Those are both 45. I think they're either Colts or Ubertis. 45.
It says Ubertis, but it's a Uberti is a different brand than Colt, but they're still the old single action revolvers.
And yeah, the 2 other characters had them.
Okay. And they're revolver looking?
Yeah, they are revolvers.
So there were 3 guns. Who loaded them? What do you mean 2 other characters? Who are they? What's their name? Because now we have 2 other people that are handling guns. Did they fire their guns? Were their guns kept on there? Who gave them the guns? Did you give them to all 3 actors, or did somebody else do it? This interview just doesn't answer any questions.
But the long barrel was the one that was used during the incident, just to be clear.
Yes, the long barrel one. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The long barrel. What does long barrel mean? Is it 6 inches? Is it 8 inches? Or 4 inch? Are the 2 other ones 2 inches? You don't know the guns that you're using, whether they're 2, 4, or 6 or 8 inch barrels. You don't know whether it's a Uberti or a Colt. You don't know which gun was given to what actor. You handed a certain gun to Alec Baldwin 3 times, you said. What gun did you hand to him? It was a Colt. It was a Colt 45 revolver that holds 6 rounds, correct? Was it loaded with 6 rounds every time? Yes. Did you load the gun before at any other time besides one time in the morning? No. See, we aren't getting good clear. It's all muddled, and so she's going to be able, if this turned out to be criminal and they tried to charge her, a defense attorney would tear this interview apart. They're not locking down good, clean answers.
The other 2 were on the actors, and those were fine.
Okay, so they're kind of like for show, pretty much.
Yeah.
They're holstered?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, they took them out and they had them on camera too, and yeah.
Okay.
When you say they have them, are they kept in their holster? Are they loaded with blanks? Or are they loaded with dummies? Are they empty? Do you ever give somebody an empty gun? If it's just going to be in his holster, does it need to be loaded with blanks? If theirs were just for looks, did they keep them in a holster? Were they loaded or not loaded? How do they know they weren't loaded? They never get into clean gun, hot gun, clear gun. That's never discussed in this whole interview. I'm like, what happened to I handled hot gun and cold gun? And Alec's big thing was, I was told cold gun, cold gun. I never hear one question about that terminology from these two freaking idiots.
Do you know, what time did you go to lunch?
Maybe about 12:30. Pretty much on the dot.
And then, so after that, Sarah pulled them out.
Yeah.
Did you see her check them, or did she just hand them to you and that's when you checked
Watch your
them?
leg.
She just handed
Stand
us, we
still.
all took them, we took them in the bag to the set, so we didn't check them there. They're in little, like, socks, little socks.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do those look like?
Little socks. They look like socks.
All right.
Yeah, they honestly look like socks, yeah.
Okay. And so when you checked it, it was on set or prior to you?
Yeah, it was on set. I didn't really check it too much after lunch, you know, because it was already locked up and everything.
I didn't check it after lunch. That's the problem. I guarantee you, they should have a policy. Maybe they don't. I mean, they're just so lackadaisical. To hire somebody like this girl that's so incompetent, maybe they don't have a... I mean, these guns ought to be checked when you put them up and when you put them in. And the rounds ought to be kept separate. And the rounds ought to be secured in an area where nobody has access, so nobody can change the rounds. The rounds should be checked and accounted for. They should be numbered so we know when one's missing. They should be marked if they don't work and they're put in a different area so they're not used. None of this procedure is cleared up whatsoever.
At lunch, we checked it and put in that last round and sent it in.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know that you had said something about keeping stuff in your fanny pack.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it's a little fanny pack. It has a lot of pockets, so it's really cool to, like, separate.
It's really cool. It's a little fanny pack with a lot of rockets, a lot of pockets, and it's really cool. What the fuck does that mean? Is the fanny pack issued, or you just do that? Is it some sort of cheat? She's got rounds mixed in there, blanks, and she doesn't... Watch when she reaches in her pocket and pulls out freaking a handful of rounds in a minute. I mean, nobody asked her. I notice you have rounds in your pocket. I thought you said you kept them in a fanny pack or on a cart. So you keep rounds in your pocket, on the fanny, in your fanny pack, and on the cart? Because all these different things, that's how you get mixed up live and not live rounds. And somebody here's a round, I found it. It happens to be a live round. I give it to Miss Incompetent. She shoves it in her pocket. She gets back. She dumps her pocket in there. Now they're in the box. I mean, it's just incompetency to the 10th degree.
Like, you know, the dummies from the blanks, but it's mostly to separate, like, the blank sizes, because there's quarter loads, there's half loads, and then there's full loads. And I usually don't keep any full loads out there unless I need them.
I usually, see, she's given herself all kind of to where there's no real procedure. Normally, sometimes, I probably checked, she's using a lot of freaking terminology that shows she has no consistent, regimented, absolute checklist on what I do to make sure it's safe. Horrible person to be in charge of guns.
But I usually keep quarter loads and half loads right here. So if it's close up to an actor, we use a quarter load, and if it's farther away from an actor, we go ahead and we use halves.
Okay. And what's the reasoning for that?
Just the halves have more smoke and they look more real.
Okay.
Yeah.
So pretty much for...
Like if it was a bigger gun, like a rifle or something. Yeah.
So you keep
or if it's outdoors, you know. But mostly it's the quarters, just in case they're closer proximity to an actor, you know. Or if it's inside quarters, or if it's around an animal or a child's quarters.
Okay. And then you had said that they're only supposed to pretty much expel...
Look at her looking away, playing with her hair, and shaking her leg. This girl just drives me.
And then you had said that they're only supposed to pretty much expel dust or smoke, right?
Yes.
Okay. Were you inside when the incident occurred?
No, I was right outside by my, my cart.
Okay. How close was it?
About 15, 20 feet from being inside.
Okay. What side of the building was done?
So the building, like the door is facing, I don't know my north.
This is why you have a diagram of the crime scene or a picture, or you do a Google search real quick and you take a snapshot and you bring it in there. And you have her mark it and put her initials, so now we know where she was standing, and she marked it and initialed it on a piece of paper so she can't change it later. Whatever.
So is it where the cross is?
I think that was the main door.
difference.
The one our cars were?
Where the door, where they were, like, coming in and everything, that door, we were, like, right adjacent to that, to the left.
Okay. Could you
Yeah.
see inside at all?
No, not really. No, I couldn't see inside.
What do you remember about?
Basically, I just, like, you know, we had a couple of, like, we had a popper pop last week. You know, the poppers are for special effects. Like, one just went off randomly last week, so I was like...
One went off randomly. Really? Just randomly? How do they go off? What's a popper? What is a popper? Who has control of the poppers? Do you? Do you keep them on a cart? Are they locked up? Are they not locked up? How did a popper go off randomly? Is this normal? Is this routine? Does this always happen? What happened after it went off? Were there safety procedures? Did people get briefed? None of these questions are asked. I mean, just incompetent.
It must be a popper, and, like, you know, I checked all of them myself, so I heard, like, the shot, and Sarah was like, what was that? And I was like, must have been a popper, and I, like, turned around, and then I heard them say medic emergency, and I was like, what the fuck? And then I, like, checked in, and I, like, looked, and I saw Alec on the ground, and I was like, oh, not Alec.
What do you mean Alec was on the ground?
Joel, and I was like, what the fuck, was it the gun? And Dave was like, yeah, it was a fucking gun, and so I was like, I walked in, and I, like, tried to see what was happening, or, like, where the gun was.
So now all the actors are pissed off at her because the gun killed somebody. Because Alex pointed a gun at somebody, cocked it, and pulled the trigger when he didn't have to, and he killed somebody, and now it's her fault. It is her fault. I mean, I absolutely think she has criminal liability here. She did a piss poor job. I don't know if they can make a case, especially from this shit interview, but I think she's culpable for why this person got shot. But I don't know what the written procedures are. I don't know who's in charge. Is there a policy? They don't even ask her. Do you have a written policy? Is there a checklist? How do you know what's supposed to be done? Who tells you how it's supposed to be done? Is that written anywhere? They don't get into her training? Nothing. What a freaking interview.
Was, you know, to secure the weapons on set. And I got yelled at, and...
I got yelled at. What do you mean you got yelled at? Who yelled at you, and what did they say? And why did they yell at you? Why do you think you got yelled at? What did you do after you got yelled at? I mean, none of these follow-up questions.
I ran out, and Dave brought me the gun, and I opened the gun up, and one of the dummies somehow had been discharged.
Okay, so Dave brought you the gun, and you open it up. Do you know if somebody else opened it before? Where did Dave get the gun? Did Alex hand it to him, or did Alex put it on the ground? Did you ask Dave any questions? No. I mean, we don't get any of this.
And can you kind of explain a little bit more what you mean by that it was discharged?
So, if I had a bullet... wait, I have some dummies.
Look at this. I thought the dummies were on a cart. I thought the dummies were in a truck. I thought the dummies were in your backpack. No. They're in my pockets. Hang on.
So... right, check these out. I wish it had just been one of these. But see how these have, like, the hole?
Okay.
And this one doesn't have a primer, right? And most of them, like, they have, like, the primers, but the primers aren't, like, hot. Like, I've never had one with a hot primer before.
Okay.
So that seems pretty weird to me. But, so, basically, this part, when a bullet shoots, the fire projects it. And this comes out, this little piece right here.
She's talking about the bullet. She's explaining to these two people what happens when you fire a round.
Little nipples. Yeah, and so when I had checked the gun, this part, that was gone.
Did you get to see the shell?
I saw the shell, yeah, and it's on the thing.
Did it have one of the... Did it look like this, or was it different?
It didn't have the hole, it didn't have that. So, I mean, it had that, and it didn't have the hole. And...
Because it was a real round, it wasn't a dummy round, you big dummy.
This was gone, so it was just the shell.
So it kind of looked
Just a cartridge.
just the regular, like, cartridge when it
Without
shot.
this, yeah.
So these ones are dummy, or because they have the hole.
Yeah.
So that one didn't have a hole. So it looked like a realistic
Yeah.
one when you saw it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
What about your...
Got a lot of
What about your blanks?
What about them?
What's the difference between a blank and that?
You know...
Well, let me check some other pockets.
The blanks.
Hang on, maybe I got one in my shoe. Oh, you know what? Here, I keep one in my hair as a hairpin. What the?
Very different. And you would absolutely be able to tell the difference just by looking at it. So basically, the end here where this is gone, The projectile is gone in the blanks, basically. This is squeezed shut. Like, you know, it's filled.
It's crimped. And instead of having a bullet at the end of it, they just crimp the brass casing in order to hold the gunpowder in. That's what she's explaining.
With like a little bit of gunpowder, like I said, either quarter, half load, or full load. Filled with a little bit of black powder, and it's opened by the metal part just going so nothing flies out of those.
Okay. So this is pretty much what looks like what was in the gun.
This is 100% what was in the gun.
That's not true. She just said the one she pulled out of the cartridge had a primer, and the other dummies don't have a primer. I think that's what she said, but I can't really figure it out because these two idiots can't make anything clear.
Except without that.
And see, as a DA investigator or as a DA prosecuting this, if I get this tape, that means I got to call these two idiots and make them explain everything that I'm explaining to the jury. I can't just show the tape because these idiots didn't get good, clear answers. I got to bring them up and say, when she said that and you said this, what did you mean? And then they got to explain it. And when you said this and she said that, what did you mean? Because they fucking don't explain it now. They're idiots. I'm at 31 minutes. Should I got a part 3? All right, we'll be back.